Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to episode 4 of the Mualimaat Collective podcast. I am your host, Muslima Ismail Ali. We are joined by none other than Yumna Abrahams and we do have a tradition on the surname now. Recently, alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Yumna, how are you doing today?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah, Muslima. Alhamdulillah. Yes, it's a new edition and I'm still getting used to it, but alhamdulillah, I'd say.
Alhamdulillah. We are in the season of parenting currently, and we spoke about previously in the other episodes just about raising children, how to raise them according to the Quran and Sunnah, solutions to challenges that we face as parents, and what we can learn in the Sunnah about these solutions. Now we're focusing more on the practical element of things now. And as I do know, and we have experienced, many people have experienced in the community, that you do work in the transitional coaching side, which is life coaching as well as business coaching, focusing on subjects such as trauma, divorce, marriage, parenting as well, and different transitions we take in life. Now, I wanted to start off with regards to where it starts. So with regards to parenting, we usually think about it and we see articles and posts, and social media is our main source of information these days. We always look at parenting as I'm going to have a baby and this is when you give birth and this is when it starts. But when would you say parenting actually starts?
Wow, that's an amazing question, Muslima. If I can put my finger on it, I think that most importantly, let's start at the beginning with regards to understanding that when we grow up, we have a set of parents and we have other adults and couples in the family who we literally kind of look up to, and they set the scene for our marriage, if I can say that in a very honest way. Because what often happens is once we are married, we will find that we do certain things and habits and actions that our parents actually used to do. And it's scary sometimes because we sometimes even use the words that our parents used to do. So when we then go and transition into getting married and then we wanting to start a family, our natural instincts will set in, which is the one about the fear of becoming a parent and wanting to love our children and give them the best that we can and give them better than what we had. And that's a comment that we need to really discuss, because in that also lies a lot of depth. But most importantly, parenting starts, I think, right at the beginning with the marriage actually being the process of the marriage being closed off and the discussion with the husband and the view of how we are going to raise our children. And I think that's important because it's an important discussion that we often miss when we are in love, because at that stage we just want to fall in love and, we want to have a beautiful wedding and we're going to get our home and, we want to start this beautiful relationship. But I think one of the most important things is that we actually should be talking as well about children and how many kids we want and, kind of have the discussion about how we want to raise them. Do we want to put them in Muslim schools? And parenting, I believe, starts at that point where we both decide that we actually want to have children, inshallah. And I know from an Islamic perspective, that's part of what we do. It's almost like it comes with a package. It comes with a ring. There's sometimes a huge expectation that we're going to have babies. And inshallah, if the couple is able to, and it happens smoothly, alhamdulillah. But there are also couples who struggle to have their own children. And while there are many other options, there are also huge challenges with regards to that. So parenting for me, I believe, starts right at the beginning before we even kind of get into things. We talk about the parenting situation and we look at ourselves as a couple and we say, what kind of home do we want to have for our little one to grow up so that we can transition easily for them as well as for us, obviously, as a couple?
One thing that actually popped in my mind when you spoke about deciding prior to actually getting married what it is you would like in your children's lives. Now, as we see people, they are majority of the time in the position prior to getting married, they are in the house with their parents. But when you are in the house, you are still your parent's child. And sometimes it would seem that even though you feel I'm in that stage where I'm moving on and I'm soon to be married and I need to think about all these things. My parents are still thinking about me as a child and they don't necessarily see the importance in that. So when having these conversations, there also needs to be facilitation. So in the instance where we have parents who are on the brink of a marriage between their children and, others' children, would you say that it should also come from them to encourage these conversations? And should it be that they should also understand the goals that the couple has for their future in raising their children?
Oh, yes, absolutely, Muslima. Unfortunately, based on societal stresses and impacts, this is not always possible. Our parents have generational trauma that they carry with them from their parents. And so in those instances, it's quite hard for them to firstly see their child, going to get married. And secondly, having to now learn as a parent to actually nurture, or rather the relationship as the pair between the parent and the daughter. Let's say a daughter who's getting married really has to be adapted, because in the past, for example, let's say my daughter and I would be very close. We would hang out weekends and go shopping together and stuff like that. And now she's getting married. And so that means that she'll literally, while she might still be in the house, she's going to take on the role of a married woman. And so as a mother, I need to be aware that she no longer has the flexibility, has the time, and even our relationship, being aware that the relationship itself will definitely change into a much more matured way. So as parents, yes, for those who are parents who are very conscious about development or growth or even parenting and so forth, will understand that there's a role for them to play with regards to almost letting go of the daughter and allowing her to become matured with her husband and starting that relationship. But as I said, Muslima, it's not always the case. And sometimes that is where there's a lot of relational situations in the home when you have a couple who got married and they're staying with the parents, because as a wife, for example, she's a new wife. She wants to start new things. They want their privacy. But also there's a mother and a father who has their relationship. And the dynamics itself in the house can cause a lot of strain on the newlywed couple. And for that reason, I highly recommend that when couples do get married, it really is, if possible, try to kind of move away from the family so that they can start their life with a foundation that is set by themselves and not by one set of parents, for example.
I actually think it's so interesting that you are mentioning this, because as time is moving on, we do see many people that, besides the fact that they are exploring career paths before getting married, they are also seeing this great need in being more independent of their parents. However, would you say that there's also a line between having that independence in your marriage and also just completely cutting family off? And is there perhaps a suggestion that you can give with regards to how they can make up their minds even prior to getting married or at the beginning stages of getting married to just balance it out?
It's a lovely question as well. I really admire your questions. They're really specific and really valid. So here's the thing, Muslima. Societal pressures and culture has such a huge role, especially in our Muslim world, where we have, and especially Cape Town also, because we're always different to the rest of the world. But there is this sense of, now they're getting married and now they want to come be independent, and I hardly see them. And, no, she's too busy. That's what sometimes the language is once you get married and you start your independence as a couple. But I think if I were to give advice around finding the balance, is that I think the couple themselves needs to be very clear about how they're going to move forward with regards to managing relationships with regards to parents specifically. So as an example, the couple can say, listen, we are going to make X amount of time for our parents every weekend. So we either go and lunch by the one, and then we go supper by the other one, which is quite nice because you don't have to cook. But also take something with, take food with, and make it as a gesture of kindness to your parents, and as a sadaqah, obviously. There could be that the discussion around how much time would we want to do it? Do we want to do it on a specific day every week? Do we want to do a Saturday and a Sunday, or do we want to actually do it in the week? So I think the first agreement of independence and with regards to managing our parents comes between the couple, and they decide, because it's very important that there's a sense of fairness between the couple's parents. You don't want to create a situation where, as the wife, you want to spend more time with your parents versus going to his parents. When we get married, our parents become our parents irrespective. So I think the starting the balance would be the discussion between the husband and the wife, and say, this is how we're going to manage our parents. Maybe at the end of the month when we get paid, we want to make a sadaqah to the one, we make the same sadaqah to the other. And then, very importantly, is actually managing that. So making sure that there's consistency, but also a very important thing that we find that causes many relationship challenges is the issue around boundary setting, Muslima. So we get to mommy's house on Saturday as an example, and then mommy and daddy says, we want to braai tomorrow, and you guys can make bring stuff to come and braai here, and we can all have a get together. But actually tomorrow is actually your in-laws' time. And so we need to set boundaries with regards to how do we actually let mommy know that tomorrow is not going to happen because we have time with our in-laws, or I talk to my husband and say, how do we want to manage this? So there's a lot of discussions that needs to happen. And when you tell mommy, I can't make it tomorrow because we are at our in-laws, and mommy says, niemand wat julle kan ander week gaan na in-laws toe. That is where we need to kind of respectfully draw a boundary. And the boundary itself, we have a lot of challenges with it, because often we tell ourselves that we are actually being disrespectful towards telling mommy now that we can't just move out my in-laws meeting or visit. But we can, in a very nice way, tell mommy, no, mommy, unfortunately, we already made plans with her, but what time is the braai, for example, and we might be a little bit late, or can we come through earlier, and then leave. So it needs to be some sort of compromising. And I think as a new wife, you want to kind of keep the peace, but also you want to have the respect towards parents. And I think that's where the wife sometimes kind of finds it hard, because she doesn't really know, who does she disappoint in the process? And the balance comes in where we are both agreeing that if there's a situation like that we sit together as well, talk about what we're then going to do about the situation, and then act as a partnership, moving forward. So that's around the balance. I think very importantly, be for balance, be for boundaries, because the boundaries is where when the boundaries are broken, or when there's an overlap or a push from one specific parent to kind of rule over or order everybody else around, that's where the challenges starts happening. Then there's discomfort, no one wants to talk, communication breaks down, and then there's a whole challenge that the couple then sits with, and not necessarily the parents.
Now, with regards to, as you mentioned, be for balance and be for boundaries, there's a specific change that is happening with not necessarily specific to our community, but worldwide as well. And that is with regards to boundary setting and modern parenting. So this is something that I've seen across the board, where there's a modern parenting thing. I have watched this series, and there was something specific that happened in there, and I never noticed it before. But in that, there was a certain way they set boundaries with regards to parents. Now, you also mentioned the factor of respect in that. Now, as Muslims, we have this additional set of rules when it comes to respect. And it's also the way that we speak. And, completely just writing someone off in a certain way is not necessarily the way to do it. But prior to just setting the boundaries, I think that from what I've learned and my little knowledge, communication is also important. Not only the way you say something to someone, but also the way you receive things. And from interactions, we always see that majority of people, especially when it comes to, these tight-knit communities and very cultural backgrounds, there's always this thing that exists with regards to not understanding when someone is trying to explain something to you and perceiving it as an attack.
Yes.
And when we look at the relationships, we also see there's this very defensive type of attitude that exists with maybe parents and children and grandparents and aunts and uncles. So this is a challenge that we face. How would you say we could possibly try to, if it comes to a person that is very defensive, how should we approach that? And how should we try, if we have the set thing that we want to tell them and we revise and, rehearse, this is how I'm going to say it. But at the same time, I need to know that they're going to receive it in the best way possible.
And in that lies the answer. So, Muslima, you mentioned the last part. You said, how do I make sure that they receive the message? And unfortunately, we can't control how they receive the message. We can use the softest of most, I'm picturing a marshmallow now. You can use the most softest, gentlest words. When the words leave your mouth, that person will be absorbing it based on their current state. So remember, we have parents who have gone through major loss. Their parents maybe had passed away. They may have gone through trauma. They might be having relationship challenges. They may have gone through divorce. And I'm not talking about parents only. I'm talking about the adults in our family. And then we want to kind of share with them something that is very hard for us. And we want them to kind of see it from the best intention, because that is what you have, the best intention. And while we can kind of set the scene for them, make sure that they're in a good mood before we tell them, unfortunately, they will take the information and they might even connect it with a previous trauma or previous somebody in their life that did the same, and it can go really bonkers from there, because you can imagine the defensiveness comes from the fact that they are not mentally matured. Maybe there's a lot of stress that side. There's a lot of reasons why they might become defensive. But what's really key here is that when you're going to have this discussion, there are a few things that you need to consider. And one of them being that the person, number one, that you can't control how they're going to receive the message. Number two, that they might not understand exactly what you're trying to say. So you need to be very clear and specific. And there's a space for you to become vulnerable with them. So what I would suggest, I often do this if I have to give feedback or speak to the kids or something like that, is I always give options. And so what I'll do is I'll make sure that I tell the person, mommy, or whether it's a son, let's use an example as my mommy. So I'll say, mommy, I really I need to speak to you about something. Do you have time for me? So you kind of make sure that you're preparing the person so that it doesn't become I just tell you, by the way, in the kitchen while there's family around. And then mommy comes and mommy says, okay, fine, give me 5 minutes and we can go into the room. And so we go into the room and we sit down, and what I advise is let the person know how difficult it is for you to have the conversation. Tell them, mommy, you know what, this is really hard for me to have this conversation, but I would really like us to have the conversation because I love you and I want us to, make a joint decision about this. Right. So you then set the scene. And then what you do is you say, respectfully, obviously, you say, mommy, yesterday mommy said something in the kitchen about me that really hurt me. So you say exactly what it is that happened, which is the situation, how it made you feel, and going forward, what it is that you would like for them to do differently going forward. Okay. So it sounds all easy, right? It's like, mommy, I felt, this is what I heard you tell this person. It really made me feel sad because firstly, it wasn't really true. And then and going forward, mommy, I would like it if you maybe not talk about that situation because I would like to know that you can come and speak to me. Something like that. I know it sounds very corny, but what's important is that there is a method to having to get a message across. And then if mommy goes, no, how can you say that? I never said that. And no. And then you say, I know, and I can see mommy's getting, that mommy is taking this personally, or I can see that mommy is angry, or you don't even have to acknowledge it. You can just let her go. Let her say what she needs to say. And then you say, mommy, shukran for saying that. I just thought it would be good for us to have this discussion, and I really appreciate mommy's time. And so, irrespective of whether she got the whether she reacted and went personally, took it personally and shouted and screamed, or actually said, no, you're just full of nonsense. I don't, this didn't happen. The fact is you got the message across. You told her that what you've noticed about her actions was not okay. And afterwards you can say, mommy, can I get a hug? Or is mommy okay? Are we okay? And then you can leave. And sometimes it gets very emotional. In that instance, give her the space to process what needs to happen. And then inshallah, later on, some kids don't have it easy with parents because their parents are in a different mental condition. Or, there's lots of, like I said earlier, societal things that impacts parents. But give her some space, and then afterwards you can always message her if WhatsApp is a better option and say, mommy, you know what, give me maaf if I said anything that offended you. I really just wanted to bring that across because it really made me feel whatever. And she might say, yeah, whatever. Or she might say, shukran, my girl. I appreciate it. I did overreact a little bit and all of that. And we hope, inshallah, that it's the latter, inshallah, and not the first part, not the first reaction.
Yes, inshallah. Now, what's standing out from this entire conversation is specifically the communication barriers and boundaries. But of course, from this, there are additional topics that we can address and speak about. And I would like to elaborating some more with regards to trauma. However, this is our first episode with just getting into communication barriers and boundaries. But in the second part of this, we will continue and we will explore a little bit more with regards to how previous traumas affects parenting, whether you are becoming a new parent or whether you are already a parent and have been a parent for quite some time. But shukran so much to you, Yumna, for joining us, and we will continue this conversation. In the second part, we will be speaking about how trauma affects our relationships and parenting.
That brings us to the end of this edition of the Mualimaat Collective podcast. Just a reminder to follow us on our social media via Instagram, Facebook, and our podcast that's uploaded to Spotify as well as YouTube as the Mualimaat Collective podcast. Shukran for listening. Until the next one, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.